So once we pulled up a new photo that we want to edit, let's get started by just sort of setting a baseline or foundation. So the nice thing with raw files is that when it comes in off of your camera, it's going to be very flat. You can see here there's not, it's kind of gray looking almost. There's not a lot of definition. There's not a lot of contrast between the highlights and the shadows. And that's actually good. It means that your file is just sort of exactly what came out of your camera. You can look at the histogram here and you can see it's exposed a bit to the left, which is what my Leica Q tries to do. That means it's going to be kind of dark. And again, if I just gave this to somebody, gave this to a client, they'd say, it's not great. So that's why developing it is important. This is almost like the negative you would get in a professional darkroom if you're shooting film. And then you're going to make the changes and things that you need to do to develop that into your final photo. So the first thing that I like to do is select a color profile. And there's a couple of options here. You can choose to use the profile that comes with your camera, but each of these is going to change things a little bit. So Adobe has a variety of different ways of handling color. And you can see as I shift these, we're going to see little subtle changes to the colors in here. So there's the Adobe Standard. Again, it's a little flat for my liking. Vivid is going to be a little bit more saturated, and that can make food photos look a little unnatural. We'll get into that in a bit. I think the standard Adobe Color is the best profile to use. Again, you can choose to use the profile that comes with your camera as well, but I like to choose Adobe Color, and I've set that to be my default. So choose a color space, and again, I like Adobe Color as the one to work with there. Now my first step, and this might surprise some professionals, is I like to begin by just using the auto setting here. I'm just going to press auto. And that's going to do the sort of first stab at developing from the raw file here into something that has a little more definition, a little more contrast. And I like to just sort of look and see, all right, what does this Lightroom think needs to happen to this sort of flat raw file to make it into something vibrant and usable. And you can see it's kept the exposure pretty much even, which I don't think is the right choice in this case, as we'll get to in a bit. It's kept the contrast pretty even. It's dropped the highlights down a bit. You can see in this particular photo, we've got a little sun that was hitting the salad that we see here. So it's not surprising that it decided to drop that, preserve some of the details in that highlight. Shadows came up a bit, again, because my camera does expose to the left. It tries to preserve shadows, so it's trying to bring those shadows up. White and black are staying about the same. It's boosted the vibrance a little bit just to get a little bit more color out of there. So I like to start, and again, this just gives us a baseline. You can see what choices it has made here, and then we can decide whether we agree or disagree with those as we go along in here. So that's the sort of basic first step, and then we'll get into all of the things that we can do to make improvements here. But the next thing I like to do is to check the focus on the image. So when we're looking at it zoomed out here, it's hard to see whether I got the focus right. And what I usually like to do as I'm shooting, in this case it was in a restaurant, is I'll take a couple of versions of the same photo with different aperture settings, different shutter speeds, different distances, and so I'll get sort of two different versions, maybe a different angle. And so I like to just click on the photo. It's going to bring us into 100% zoom here. I scroll around and take a look and make sure we've got a nice crisp focus. And I'll often look at two versions of the photo and say, okay, which one do I like better? This, I see we're starting to lose focus as we get away from the very center part of the photo. I can take a look. This is an f2.8. This is an f2.8. So I didn't actually change the aperture setting between these two, just a slightly different angle. But I don't really like that a lot of this ends up, not really crisply focused. So of the two versions of that shot, this is the one that I'm going to work with. And so that's the first step, to just choose the version of the photo that you're going to work with if you shot multiple. And you want to give yourself that flexibility. So when you're out in the field, take multiple shots of each item. I only took 2 here. It's actually very low for me. I might take 10, 15 shots of a single dish if I have time, and end up with something ideally that's going to be crisply focused. And again, I'll change my shutter speed, I'll change my aperture, I'll change different angles, and I'll move in and out, as we'll see with some of the other photos later on, try to get that focus. And again, just go into that 100% view, move around. Looks pretty good. These candied walnuts are nice and crisp. We can see a lot of the texture in here, and that means we're probably good to go on this one. Now, the final thing I would recommend is come up with a way to flag the version of the photo that you're going to edit. Because when we export our photos later, we want to know which ones we edited, and we also want to know which ones we selected as the sort of best version. So the way I like to do that is I like to flag the photo. Lightroom has a couple of different options for that. If I press the P key, it's going to flag this as a pic. And you can see there's a little white flag that appears on the photo down here showing that I have flagged it. And that identifies it as one later on that I'm going to export. And I'm not going to flag the version that I didn't like. So you can choose multiple ways to do this. Another way is to press a number key. So you can give it a rating. It's a rating between 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you can see we got little stars down there. I prefer the flagged or unflagged. And so I just press the P key, flag that as a pic, and now I know that it's the one I want to work with. So those are the sort of basic tweaks, and next we'll get into some more advanced edits.